is the Amadon Planet Podcast, episode 23. I am your host, Joel Amadon. Thank you for joining me on this never-ending quest to figure out how to teach better. Today on the podcast, I am talking with Dr. Hunter Taylor from the University of Mississippi about James Clear's best-selling book, Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. If you've listened to previous episodes of the podcast, you have heard me refer to this book a few times, if not many times. And so I'm really excited to talk more about these ideas more explicitly. Like in past, it's been in reference to some of the ideas, but Hunter and I had an exchange. We'll talk about it at the beginning of the podcast about when we first, like, hey, you read that book? You read that book? And it's good. It's really good. So if you haven't read it yet, pick it up. But we're going to talk about applying some of these ideas to teaching. But a little bit of background about Hunter before we get into the podcast. He is a clinical assistant professor at the University of Mississippi who works with teachers, coaches, and administrators from across the state of Mississippi. His writing and research focus on how the effective coach is one of the best leadership models in and outside of education. Before joining the faculty here at the University of Mississippi, he spent 10 years as a men's basketball coach and 2 years as a U.S. Senate staffer. And before we jump into the conversation about Atomic Habits with Hunter, just a quick disclaimer, in no way will we be able to communicate the whole value of the book. And even if we did, it would be from our perspective. In other words, if you like what you hear, go get the book for yourself. And again, as you're going to notice, we jump right into the content of this book right away. We don't even talk about kind of the background of it on James Clear's story, about how he used these sort of principles to bring himself from the hospital bed to the championship team. He's just done a lot with thinking about how to break things down and explain it in pretty clear language. And so we're not going to capture all that in this conversation. So if you're looking for it, go pick up the book. Links to purchase the book can be found at AmadonPlanet.com// episode 23. And that'll be a link to Bookshop, which supports local bookstores, or you can seek it out wherever you buy high-quality books, and if possible, you can try to support your local bookseller in person, like Square Books here in Oxford, Mississippi. Even during a time of social distancing, you can call up and either get it shipped to you or do curbside pickup. All right, well, let's not delay any longer. Here's my conversation with Dr. Hunter Taylor on Atomic Habits. Hunter, thank you so much for being willing to join me on the Amadon Planet Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. What an honor.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I am honored. I'm honored that you're willing to join me and talk about Atomic Habits. And, thinking about this, and we were kind of talking before we hit the record button of when did we start knowing that we both had this mutual affection for James Clear book, Atomic Habits. It was at the
iCarnegie. Yeah, it was the iCarnegie lead workshop that I know our department did with Oxford School District. And so you've got all these people that identify as a leader in their different departments that are trading ideas and this and that. And I just overheard you speaking with the assistant superintendent at Oxford School District about, hey, you need to read this book. I think it would just help on just how you think on some things. And it was kind of like that little secret of like, I wanted to nudge you of like, hey, I like James Clear too, Yeah. and that's how it started.
Yeah, it always seems like when I hear, I've heard him on a couple of different things, like when he starts talking, like you just start nodding, like you don't even recognize what you're doing. You're just like, oh yeah. Like same thing when you're reading the book is just start nodding a little bit. And yeah, so I knew that, and that was what, January?
Yeah, January, February.
Yeah. So 5 months in a pandemic, and here we are.
Yeah. I don't think anybody got to use any of what was created. There. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you know what? I was thinking about it. The whole point of Oxford School District, where we're located, being able to put in their learning system and seeing the assistant superintendent at a time putting some things in, you can see. You know what? I bet you there's a lot of minor improvements going on. Thinking like, what's the main goal here? Oh, cannot imagine. Yeah, I want to. That's a book for a future episode. The Learning to Improve book by Rick Gomez, Grunow, and Lee Matthew. It's on my shelf. I didn't memorize those. Just sounded very impressive there.
You did.
So we're going to talk about the book, and we're going to go through the categories. We've adjusted the category just slightly.
Mhm.
And so, but from if people have listened to previous episodes, but maybe they haven't. So let's jump into it. Let's jump into our high five. So these are 2 to 3 learnings from the book, then how we can apply those to teaching. You want to go first, Hunter?
Sure. Um, you like I jotted a couple things down when you sent me that, and I still think I go back to, I think the first thing that stuck out the most to me, part of the responsibility that we have as an educator, it went back to like his deal on identity based habits. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you and I both have a heart for the people that like come into a setting, right? And there are all these unwritten rules in society where we come from, a classroom, all this kind of stuff, right? And so not everybody's on the same level playing field when they walk in a room, and it's an academic environment. And some people have been complimented since they were in junior high about how smart they are, how
Mm-hmm.
creative they are, how good of a writer they are. And those things kind of compound, and they build into confidence. And when you see certain students that come in your class, and as soon as you ask a question, I mean, they're eager to show that they know the answer, and they want their peers. Sometimes they want their peers to know, hey, that they're locked in, they have a feel for this. I always have a heart for those who you can see gold in, but they haven't received the same amount of compliments leading up to
Mm-hmm.
that point. And so, uh, some people can buy into the lie that, I'm not really a writer. That's not my thing. When really you just don't have the reps. Like,
Mm-hmm.
all of it's, one of his big things always was, you know, to be considered this, you've got to do it. So write every day, you build in the habits, and you teach somebody about, uh, I see you in this way, then that is going to do more for them taking on this persona, right? So like if somebody never thought of themselves as creative, and you can kind of tell them that, yeah, you are. I've seen you do it in this way, this way, this way. It just might not be what you've heard of before as what a creative sounds and looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that's the first thing that stuck out to me in this is, if we're going to make certain changes in ourselves, and then if we're hoping that students change for the better in our classes and our programs, we need to kind of affirm certain things that we see, and get them to take on that identity. And I thought that was a huge point that he makes. Um, uh, that definitely correlated to the environments that you and I step into every day. So that was the first one that stuck out to me.
Well,
Did you
and
want?
Well, yeah, just to build off of what you're saying too, and I guess there's 2 ways to think about that. You and I were both math teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and so thinking about like how we're having to do some of the same things of, hey, what you're doing you might not see it as being part of the habits of being a math teacher or being a math student or a doer of mathematics, but they
Right.
are like these are valued. I see them as participating. So like you're guiding them toward this identity of that these things that they're already doing are moving them to this thing that they might not see. Like, oh, these things are what I would do to be a reader or a writer or a
Yes.
mathematician or whatnot.
Yes.
Or also too, like, oh, you want to be this. Well, these are the habits that'll get you there, So it's either helping them
Totally.
in getting to their destination or helping them see, hey, this is the destination you could go to with these things that you're already doing. Like, I like that. I mean, the identity there, that's,
No
um,
doubt.
yeah, that's huge.
Or I know that, like, so often you hear, especially like, we're fathers, and you hear this more, I think, from younger kids, where they say, "I'm not really a reader." You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you are. You just like reading what you like, right?
Right.
So there's like the quote unquote, to be considered a reader, that means you have to read these certain books. Well, it doesn't just, that's a lie, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I'm getting people and showing that, hey, you love reading this and checking this news source and looking at this feed and reading this off of James Clear, somebody that you're a fan of on Twitter, or this, like, you are a reader, like
Yeah.
and you're encouraging them to build that into their daily lives. And then you see that to where the more comfortable you get with what is comfortable and that you enjoy, then you do start testing yourself. And like, I do want to like experiment with this book that maybe I never thought was for someone like me ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, that reminds me of there's a researcher at Wisconsin, and she did stuff with like World of Warcraft and games and stuff like that. I don't even know if they still play World of Warcraft anywhere, but anyway, she was talking about how she did a study, and they saw how the students were reading way beyond their, perceived like Lexile level or whatever it is that measured their reading level, way beyond it. If you gave them something that was right in their wheelhouse, like, hey, here's how you go defeat this dragon in this castle. And they are like, oh, and they're like studying that, and they're persevering. They're like struggling with words, but they're still getting through it. So like, I know how to kill the dragon,
Totally.
Versus like if you gave them something else like that, well, they're not willing to struggle because they're lacking the interest. And so there is something about that, like connecting them to who they want to be. I want to be good at this thing. I want to reach this goal or whatnot. Well, what are the things you need to do? I need to read through this stuff. I need to have this habit of doing this. So
totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm gonna jump on and give one. And I really like, and I guess to back up too, James Clear really, he's pretty incredible person. He gives a little bit of background in his story at the beginning to talk about like he had a very traumatic incident that happened, and then how he got into this kind of improving himself and going from someone who was in a hospital to someone who was achieving big things on the field, and then translating that into his own work and his own business now.
Right.
It's just kind of amazing. And so the one thing that I thought was really powerful, and as a math person, that I bet you it struck out to you too, the whole picture of progress on page 16 and on page 22, when it talks about like that 1% better versus 1% worse.
Yeah.
That just really stuck out to me. And thinking like, especially now when, calendars are getting wiped clean and stuff like that. And you have this time, and I know people are busy. I know this is not everyone's reality, but that there is these open time, at least for us, like we don't have sports in the afternoons or in the evenings now. So it's what do you do? Are we getting better? Or are we, just sitting there like watching TV all the time? Or are we getting better as a family? Or are we getting worse as a family? And it's just like how the 1% better versus 1% worse, how that compounds itself.
Yes.
It's just kind of incredible there. And then also to compare that to, there's the picture of progress. There's it's an exponential curve. It's not a linear, it's not a line, so that it's not going to be this, steady improvement every single day. It's going to be slow, but then all of a sudden there's going to be this curve. It's just going to keep going up. And it's just the power of those incremental small changes. And that's where the atomic part of the Atomic Habits comes in, right? Like that you could really swing the difference here.
It makes me think of, I'm sure you also probably subscribe to his newsletter, and I don't know if this was from the actual book or just something he may have put on one of his social media devices or something.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
Yeah. But I remember he made the point, kind of like what you were just saying, like how many newsletters and individual writings he wrote before putting things together for the book, and just how polished he got just off of reps over and over and over and over and over. And so like, I think the lie, right, is you can see a book like this and you can think, wow, this guy must be just exceptional. And this is just a product of his exceptionalism, right? That this isn't for me. I could never create something like this. And I love how transparent he is about, actually, this was a lot of work. This was, it was the diagram that you already referenced. This was 1% over years into building something that he cared a lot about, and he's got a talent for, but it was work. It wasn't just he showed up and he has these gifts.
Right. And that, and that gets into the, maybe it's back to the identity thing. Like he became a writer through reps, and it's not just, it wasn't a clear, straight, greased path for him. Like there was some struggle. There was, whatever you choose, there's going to be struggle, and there's going to be the reps that need to get put in. And it's not just going to be, all of a sudden I'm a writer. Like, no, that's not how it works.
Absolutely. The other thing I thought of like just going through this, you said like the top two, is like the power you have as a teacher in kind of controlling, or I'd say more so influencing the environment of your room, right?
Mm.
And
Oh
so,
yeah.
like what I want to be celebrated, what I want to be easily accessible, um, things I want to reward. I remember, I still don't remember who said this exactly, but they were talking about uh, the buzzword that we've heard so much from the culture that gets misused. It says, he was talking about it in like a business culture, and he said, you know what basically culture is? It's who gets hired, who gets promoted, who gets a raise. So if you want to see what a place's culture really is, look for the people that get hired, promoted, or get the raise.
Mm.
And their values that they put on, their quality of work, that's what's really valued in this building, right?
Yeah.
So you think of like in a classroom, in a sports arena, in a performance class, whatever it may be, um, right? The kid that gets the 98 has the
Mm-hmm.
98 average. The one that is the quarterback, the one's the cheerleader, the one that's the lead percussionist. Those are the people who gets the lead in the school play. Those are typically the ones that get celebrated by peers and by the community. But the great thing that we have in control of is we're in control of who gets celebrated in our room. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about what we want to be valued, and you can talk about certain character traits from perseverance, improvement, who did a great job about being a great teammate and giving credit to their peers on a group project. There's all things that you can really celebrate in mass. But it also made me think of, I know you do so much work in how you tie mathematics to social justice, which I've never heard that before, nor have I ever seen that emphasized. But I love how teachers take a subject and make something else super accessible, and it's valued in this room. And all of a sudden, by being in this room repeatedly over months, a year, I care about this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And I see other people care about it, and other people are getting involved and not just talking about it. They're looking for creative ways. Hey, can I build this that goes and impacts this community, etc. And I love that the how he does in his writing. He talks about like if you want to take on a certain identity, it's kind of easy if you just join a group, a team, whatever that has that culture where like that's valued. Like you'll take on that identity a whole lot easier, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And so it made me think of when you had asked that, it made me think of the power we have to kind of create an environment where that is attractive. Those things about just being a good citizen.
Yeah. And that, I mean, and you think like that even extends to, we've in that global pandemic state of how do we design our online environments, right? Or what are we
Yep.
doing to make those accessible? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
could use 8 different platforms in my online classes or, and it could be like, those are the best tools to do what I want to do. Well, now I've just, for the kid that's got a smartphone that's barely hanging on, I've just totally crashed it and they can't participate in anything versus the other kid that's got Wi-Fi and,
Yep.
iPad, got everything. And like, yeah, they're able to take advantage of that, but that others like, how am I seeing the values and the identities that I'm having that I want to see in my mathematics? How am I also doing that in my practices in the classroom? Right.
Right.
And are
Right.
those consistent?
Absolutely.
And that kind of, I mean, so you're talking about designing of the environment, and what you can do it to encourage the kind of habits that you want people to have. I think he's pretty nice about that. Like even, I think what was the example of like what the lunchroom and where the like water and
Totally.
yeah, good, the good food was versus the junk food. And I think too, just what I see is like this idea of agency and like how a teacher can, use what's in here and some of the things he's done from psychology, and he's taken all this, put all this stuff together to talk about habits and thinking about how we can help teach our students and how we can reinforce this idea of designing habits or breaking habits, to reach the identity that you want to be. And I think, I was a secondary, so dealing with freshmen and thinking about how can I teach them agency, that they have power over their lives, and how can we, encourage that? And like, these are some things to do that you can use to do that. Like, versus being I don't want to say a victim, but being like, just the world is working on me versus me working the world. I think Freire talks about reading and writing the world. Like, I'm learning how to write my own world a little bit through this stuff. And so, yeah, he really breaks it down with talking about how a habit is the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward, making it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. Or if you want to break a habit, interfere with that stuff, make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying. I think that idea of agency for, students in the classroom, or, we're both parents thinking about it for our own children. Like, how do you, you don't want to do this habit. This is a bad habit. Okay. How do you break it? Or you want to do that. You want to reach that identity for yourself. All right. Well, what is the habit you want to create that gets you there? I think that's beautiful to show that kind of like that I have agency over my world, I guess.
Absolutely. So it makes me think, I know you get out in the field a lot. I try to a lot as well. And just how gratifying is it to when, like, you walk into a classroom, one of your students is teaching, and like the setup of the room, like, it's just very intentionally done. Right. So I might be the, whatever teacher. I'm the ninth grade English, and there is a state curriculum that I have to follow. But there are going to be pockets of time that I'm going to create where I've done a great job about kind of building this library for my room, and I've got visuals up, and I've done such a great job in contact work with my students that I know what they're into. I know what their community's like. And now I provide resources that don't have that mandated, state test marker on them.
Yeah.
But hey, these are available, and like, you get to choose which book you want for this session, for the next 20 minutes. Don't care. I just want, this is a time where we're going to dive in, and we're going to be a class that likes to read. And so I'm going to do my job as far as getting intel about what you're into, and then I'm going to curate my classroom library with options that for you to enjoy and grow in this habit.
Yeah, like, it's pretty amazing. Like, there's not too many people that get magazines anymore, but you send them to a doctor's office, and what do? They open up a magazine, and just like, if it's available and like it's there, that's part of those things that he talks about in designing those habits.
Definitely.
Did you have any more for high five?
The only other one I could think of is just something that came out recently, and it was a perspective of an alumni of the teacher corps. And the girl's name is Clara. She's a teacher at South Panolan now. And we've been talking about designing kind of like a wellness challenge for our new teachers this summer that goes on at the same time as all this programming and teacher training is. And it's something that is to just like help encourage people to build good, healthy habits while they're about to get overloaded with a bunch of new, joining a new profession. You got to learn all these new procedures. You've got to get reps. You're in school as well. And the thing that really stuck out to me that she did such a great job of emphasizing is, if you don't watch it, when you say healthy habits, it kind of can turn into, okay, that means we're going to run 2 miles a day. It turns into a running club, or it turns into, we're going to do yoga together on Zoom for 45 minutes. And like, those are really maybe 2 of 5 options that consistently get thrown out. And she was so great about saying, hold on. For those people that sometimes can experience a little bit of like shame and not, meeting whatever requirement we said we were going to try and hit this week, like, let's build this down into what healthy habits really are, and let's make some achievable ones, That way we can kind of stack these things and people can get confidence and feel like, hey, they are taking care of themselves in the midst of all this new busy work. And so she was like, 3 glasses of water,
Yeah.
a healthy meal, 7, 8 hours of sleep. If you can spend 10 minutes by yourself quietly, just turn everything off, 10 minutes. Like these are all things that can go towards counting as points for this kind of like a little wellness game that we're trying to mess with. But that makes me think back to, I think what you already mentioned of how Clear is so big on just making these achievable habits happen, right? So they can
Mhm.
be automated, and you get momentum, and then you can increase things, more and more.
Well, yeah, that was, we couldn't have planned this better, Hunter. That it was perfect. Led me into the when he talks about the 2-minute rule.
Mm-hmm.
Like those habits that it cannot take more than 120 seconds to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go for a run. It means put on your running shoes. Take
Yeah.
2 minutes to put them on, take them off, and just establish that habit. And then pretty soon you'll be like, well, I could go outside, like,
Totally.
or like, in what I love the definition, I wrote it down. It's the smallest action that confirms the type of person you want to be. I'm going to be a healthy person when I start teaching. I'm going to be healthy. So that could be, the first thing I do in the morning is drink a glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's a win.
That's a win. And
Yeah.
that's a small action that confirms the type of person I want to be. Or, even if it's not the 10 minutes alone, if it's just 2 minutes, 2 minutes, a good start, or I want to read for 2 minutes, I can get a page done in 2 minutes. So it's, I love those because it is like, it's almost like shame-free, like what do we call it? New Year resolution, right? It's almost like, I'm not gonna say I'm running a half marathon. Like,
I
no,
know. That's not me.
no,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or just to say, every time my kid comes home or I come home and I see them or I see my wife or whatever, I'm going to say, how's your day?
Yep.
Right. That's probably a 2-minute habit, and I'm going to be a caring father. Well, there's a 2-minute habit that's going to do that. So
No doubt. No doubt.
now I better ask my wife how her day was after this podcast before
You and
this
me
airs.
both.
Yeah. So hey, how about so we talked about the what order did I put these in? I think it was the you make the call, or now you know. Thinking about something that if you would have known this a long time ago, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I think I have two things. The first first one is like I guess a healthy habit. I like to eat. Okay, I mean, I guess it's just how I was raised, and mom was a good cook, and so often I can remember how we would celebrate things.
Oh
Is we
yeah,
go to dinner, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And it's never going to be we're going to Whole Foods, like we're never going to the burger
Here's some
joint.
quinoa, Hunter. There you go.
Yeah, that's not a reward. And so it's funny of like I think of the times when I've tried to get healthier and healthier, and here's been my reward. If I can go 30 days where I've done a better job about eating and drinking good things in my body. I've exercised. Well, I'm going to celebrate on the 30th day by eating the worst meals possible.
Just crushing it. Yeah.
Crush all the work I just done. Right.
Yeah.
And so I loved one of the points he made of, he was like, well, let's just reframe the reward. Okay. So we're not losing the identity that we've worked so hard to create. And so like, if you've done these things, well, let's make the reward be an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's, whether that's, I remember I thought he used one that was like, if you've worked out, if you've lifted weights for 30 days in a row, then you could get like a massage. Or if I don't know if I'm getting older. I like going on a walk with my wife and just us though. So like if we can get a sitter and just some quiet time where that's a good enough reward for me of like, doing something over a period of time that was kind of stretching or, I'm just trying to think of things like that. Obviously, hopefully when this period of time ends, I love going to see live music or hear a reading at Square Books or, just some experience. I want to do a better job about rewarding myself with that as opposed to, let's go get a good meal,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I like too that those experiences are, going on a walk with your wife, it'd be like, hey, now you got a cheerleader for you too.
that's right.
Someone that's like, hey, how you doing on that? Cause I want to go on that walk, or I want to go to that, reading at Square Books or that concert,
Totally.
getting those people on board with you. You said you had
Totally.
two though. Did you
So
have another one?
the other one was things I would have done differently. And I didn't have a math teacher like you or be around people in mathematics that were tying in other things. And so I remember being a high school geometry teacher. And again, this goes back to kind of creating the classroom culture where you're just exposing a variety of things and it's a fun environment. I always thought that was just reserved for the social studies teacher, right? Or the history teacher, because they could pull in all these great characters and costumes.
Yeah.
There are so many more, books, movies, science teacher, like they always had the lab. They
Mm-hmm.
could bring in animals. They could bring in, you could do fun experiments. Even English, I thought they had more things that they could quote unquote be creative. And so if I would, if I would have read this a while ago, I think I would have tried to tap into creating my classroom culture a little differently than just. I think it was just modeled for me in a way that was, math is supposed to be business-like. We're coming
Mm-hmm.
in, you get your calculator off the sleeve, right? When you walk in,
Yeah.
it has the corresponding number to your desk,
That's right.
and then we're going to put, we're going to do some problems in math together over overhead and stuff like that. I mean, I would have reframed how my classroom was.
Yeah. Versus like, I know you had a lot of experience with coaching and thinking about,
Yeah,
all the different ways that a play was dependent on the angles in which people do
totally.
things, or how area is being taken up in space. And like, we've both been watching, I bet you've been watching The Last Dance. Have you been watching
Oh,
The Last
yeah.
Dance?
Oh, yeah.
And just thinking about how different the game is because of, spacing, right? And how
Yes.
that just changed, passing angles and what you're capable of doing from from driving the lane versus like when Jordan did it, he got tackled. And now, you could, because you got to pay attention to those shooters in the corners and stuff like that. And
I'm
so,
with you.
yeah. And so
Yeah,
like the
I'm
habit of bringing that into the classroom could have been something you could have developed.
totally. Hey, a side note with that, yeah, the triangle
Yeah.
offense,
The triangle.
it looked cluttered to me.
Yeah.
Seeing it now from the, with everybody wants to put guys in the corner and space it out. And I'm with you. I was like, I don't know if that works today.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And for me, from my perspective, I kind of, did something off my last learning that kind of put in I wish I would have done this back then. And then, it's something I want to do in the future or have been doing, is that whole 2-minute rule. And
Yeah.
I talked about this on a previous episode, but just like, I'm trying to write more. I'm trying to identify more as a writer. And so like my 2-minute version of being a writer is like, I can write a sentence, I can write a sentence a day at a minimum. Like I've hit the, whatever I'm writing, and I can write a sentence a day. And like, my goal is 100 words, and that's still not much more than that. But even just having those like accomplishable goals. So I'm saying like, I'm writing every day. And what do writers do? They write every day. And so
That's right.
And so that's something I think I wish I would have started that a long time ago, especially during dissertation season, where it felt like my perfectionist side of me said like, oh, you need an hour to really do anything good. You've only got 20 minutes. You can't do anything. And there was a good book, I think, called, and maybe you saw this too when you were doing your dissertation. It was like How to Write Your Dissertation in 15 Minutes a Day. Did you see that book?
I never had that.
Yeah, I saw it. I bought that thing because I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But it was kind of sort of the same thing. Is like, are you developing the habit, right? And I didn't really pay attention to that book, but I'm trying to pay attention to what's in this one that we're reading. So that whole 2-minute rule, and just even thinking about some other things that I want to make sure I get done every day. And I call it my core 5. So it's, I'm going to read, I'm going to write. So even if it's 1 page, I'm going to read 1 page out of something, write. I want to write something. I want to connect with somebody. So we're connecting. So check that one off. And that could be just a text, so that's a 2-minute version of that. I want to move. So even if that's a walk around the block or something like that, got a dog, so that helps. And then pray. Want to pray. And so like that, it doesn't have to be this fancy, like I'm going to get down on my knees and, blood's going to come off my forehead, but it doesn't have to be this, get the habit. And it's like, it comes all back down, get the habit of what you want to be, So
I like that.
Those 2 minute, that really, like the whole thing about 2 minutes and the smallest action that confirms the type of person you want to be. Page 165 is the quote. And that I just love that. And that's something that I think, what are those 2 minute habits I can teach my students? Like, yeah, you didn't get all your homework done, but at least did you get the habit of looking at it? Open up the book to the thing and like, that's it. Just do that at least,
Core 5, I'm stealing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's been kind of a good thing for me, especially now. It's like, okay, if the schedule is cleared off, I know at least I got to get those things done. So
yes.
Did you have anything else? So we did kind of I've kind of in future, I'm going to collapse these categories, but so we did the now and then you make the call. Do you remember those? You make the call. Do you remember like from back in the day? Like it was like an umpire. I can't remember if it was a Wild World of Sports or something like that. It's like you make the call.
I do a little bit. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So that was just a reference for, I guess, older folk. Yeah.
I got it.
Did you have anything for that?
Yeah. And it kind of goes with what you just spoke on, is trying to be a better writer. And I think I have to fight. Fight that. How do you be a writer? A writer writes every day.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that was holding me up was I would do everything from my office. And so I'm answering emails. If we have like a quick meeting down the hallway, I let that just occur where you can barge right in and or for a student or maybe want to read something really quick. So all these things are going on, right? And then it's his writing that it's like the easiest cue always wins, right? Mm-hmm. Well, writing for me isn't easy. So if something's going to be tabled to the next day when there are options on my desk, writing normally gets tabled. So what I started doing was I'd leave Guyton and I just put my phone on airplane mode, and I made sure it was during a time where I knew I didn't have meetings or something like that. And I would just walk to the library. And for one thing, it's a beautiful walk, right?
Oh, yeah.
From us to, to the library, and landscaping is just gorgeous. And you walk in, and I just go up and I'd go to the second floor, and I'd go to like one of those back corner study tables that you see other students
mm-hmm.
in. And I knew no one would bother me. My phone's off. And I don't know if it was just the mind shift of, okay, the only thing that I'm allowed to do at this table in this library is write. So do not open emails. Do not put my phone back on and check to see if I got a text, for this hour. And hopefully some days it's 2 hours where you can really just focus on getting better and get some confidence with reps.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it kind of goes into, where he talks about habit stacking, like trying to put these pleasurable habits on top of each. I mean, and if you've never been to the University of Mississippi's campus, it's one of the most beautiful in the country. Oh, and the walk that we have, it is amazing. So it's like, hey, I get to have this walk, and then I get to have the walk back. At a minimum, I'm getting 2 really great walks out of this experience. And so, yeah, that's a great example of how you can kind of put those things together.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm, kind of going back to the dissertation and big projects. And I mean, I guess thinking now, one other example that's made me think of was kind of related to what you just talked about is the habit stacking. Right now, I get up at 6 o'clock ish, and I, get the dog, and we go and I do my Bible reading is through my phone while it's being read to me. And then I'll do Duolingo. I'm trying to learn some Spanish. And so those two things, so it's like walk the dog, Duolingo, Bible reading. And it's like, and then come back and I make coffee. And it's like, love the coffee, love getting outside, especially now the weather's perfect in the morning. And it's like, I'm learning. And so already like within 30 minutes of waking up. Yeah. I've got a lot of wins that are going on, and the dog likes me. So, so those are sort of things that I you kind of see like, hey, that really worked. And so like, if I have something else I want to tack on, there would be the place, he talks about, if you can stack something else on, what would it be right at that point? Right.
Right.
To what else might be to there, because there's an excellent cue right there. I'm like, I've already got these things. I could, maybe we can get 5 wins right before the
Right.
day has even started.
Right.
So yeah, maybe you just said, right. Maybe I should write my sentence right there, get started the day. There you go. So, all right. And I added in, I threw a curveball at you. I mentioned this right before we hit record, but I was talking about this idea of critical eye. Mm-hmm. And so I got something I want to bounce off you and see what you think. And so the point of this one was, no ideas are completely perfect. Like we have to be thinking about what are some other perspectives to be thinking about. And so one thing that I thought of, especially now when we're dealing with, that some folks don't have complete control of their schedules or like their what's going on in their life. Like the pandemic is, wreaking havoc around their world. And so I was just thinking that some habits are beyond the teaching of this book. Like, so if we're thinking of substance abuse, if you have trauma, et cetera, or the control or agency of the environment, the circumstances might not exist. Like, hey, just, cue craving response reward, just go from there. And like, it's a little bit more serious than that. And so, not to say that anyone can, just break that habit. Like, I don't know if I've had experience of substance abuse in my family, and, it would take more than this book to offer some things to that.
No doubt.
But yeah, I don't know if you had anything that kind of a critique of some of the things, or just like, or not a critique, but just a, well, here's the extent that we might want to think about these ideas.
I think one for me is closely related, but it is, when you read books by James Clear, or I know you like Adam Grant as well. Greg McKeon and Susan Cain. There's so many good ones out there that they're writing about similar things. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's almost like, well, if you don't have a job where you really have control over, embedding these rhythms in, it's kind of tricky. So like if you have a job that, like you're on call, or like every hour is kind of unpredictable.
Right.
Like how much, like it almost seems like this is something that works, for professor, teacher, because you have pockets of time where it's respected, right, for you to work on your craft. Like you're expected to be a writer, right? Like you're expected to produce research. You're expected to be a reader because you need to know new ideas and old ones that need to be revealed to students. And so I just think of, I would think of like criticisms coming from, workers where there is like just a lot of pressure every hour. And how can I embed these rhythms into my day? Because this stuff sounds great, right? It sounds like a great way to live. It's a healthy, calming way to live too, but it sounds almost kind of like a privilege too.
Yeah. And to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But actually, this made me think of something too. Like, and I know you've done some work with the football team, the championship football team in town, the Oxford Chargers. Like, is there any of these principles that from the Atomic Habits or something that you can at least connect to that you've seen within the football program and what Coach Cutcliffe has done?
Yeah. So like a year ago, we made that like our spring theme was habits, and we did a book. We took the book and we tried to, like give weekly lessons about it. And then like every player kind of got a homemade habit tracker, if you will. So from February to, I think it's like start of February to the end of April. So you got February, March, April, you got 3 months to think through, whether it was, a personal goal, a lifestyle thing that you wanted to add, or if it was a certain, maybe like a physical goal about I wanted to get to this point in my bench press, because they're doing a lot more like conditioning type stuff or weight room. And they had check-ins with their position coach meetings every week, and then they had to write out plans. And they obviously can't be too detailed, but you'd have a plan for the month of February. And then you had a plan that went from February to the end of March, and you had a plan that went from February to April. So you had checkpoints along the way. And the great thing was, during those meetings with their position coaches, the coaches would then, help advise the kids about, hey, you're a little off pace for where, your goal was. So maybe we need to amend the goal, or we need to kind of change the strategies that you're using to get there. I thought it was just a cool experience for them to kind of see progress. And we really had to focus on, getting those small wins in, rather than just that grand thing of, you're going to shave, 3/10 off your 40 in 3 months. That's hard to do. Right. Or, it was more so about, kind of like a core 5 type principle.
Yeah.
So I thought, I thought the guys liked it. The coaches really liked it, because they could see there was a good accountability piece to helping a kid try to arrive at his goal.
Well, and you can't really argue with the results, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, and the thing is too, like maybe what you would see some people do is like, we're going to win our goal is go win the championship. Right. And versus like, no, let's do something within small,
right, that
is giving you, like, going back to clear, like giving you those habits of someone who would win a championship. Right. Or of like, and to think like, and just from a parent perspective, like if I've got adults that are not me, that are pouring into my kid, to helping them identify a goal, identify the habits to meet that goal, and then helping them revise those things. It's not just leave them alone and like, oh, you didn't do it or you did do it. Like, no, let's help you like reflect and think about how I might revise either the goal or what a life skill. Oh my gosh.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's like we're talking about this stuff at our age, and you're like, man, what an advantage if you would take this principle seriously at 16 years of age, Yeah.
And then, and to see if you, like you did with an entire team, you created a whole culture around that, and versus like just one kid and like no one else is doing it. Like that's probably hard to do versus like, no, everyone's doing it. And there's people seeing gains. It probably became addictive, like, hey, I want to see some gains too,
Totally.
That's awesome.
Well, and it's one of those things too. We both know this from like mentoring people before, is like sometimes, right? Like you mentor someone and they have this great goal and they tell you, hey, doc, hey coach, whatever, this is where I want to be next year. And you're like, all right, that sounds great to me. And then all of a sudden, like you get frustrated with them because you assume then that they know how to go about working to get that goal. And so it bothers you of like, how come you're not doing X, Y, and Z? Because that's normally the formula that it takes to get to reach this goal. And, and so it's what a great exercise about like checking in of, okay, well, what's your plan to get this goal? Well, let me help you, let's walk through it together. Because this isn't going to be easy, but it is achievable, but we got to have a plan.
Yeah. What are the reps you're going to do to get this done? Right.
Got it.
That's awesome. All right. This is the hard one. So we used to do some for a 7-year-old because I had a 7-year-old, but now I have an 8-year-old. And so he's starting to learn bigger words. So I thought sum in 7.
Okay.
So try to sum it up in 7 words. And I don't know if you, and so we use the example of Michael Pollan's book in Defensive Food. There's a little rubber band across some romaine lettuce, it looks like, on the front of that cover. And it says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So that was like the sum up of that whole book in 7 words. So I had to do that in a class once with PowerPoints, like what's best practice for PowerPoints. We did something like that. So I don't know. Did you come up with anything that was about 7 words?
I did. It's 6 words.
Ooh, right? Nice. Just save that one for.
Yeah.
So
All
like
right.
maybe a boom at the end or something.
A mic drop emoji.
Yeah.
Incentives can start, but identity sustains.
Ooh, I like that. And
Yeah.
say that one more time.
Incentives can start, but identity sustains.
Nice. There you go. So,
Can
so
you,
I was trying to rhyme. So a habit taught is a future success bought.
I like it.
So yeah, I was trying.
Memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, like the little Andy Stanley. I don't know if you listen to
Totally.
this. He does
Yeah.
all those things
Yeah.
that rhyme.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, if I
Oh
can
yeah.
get it to rhyme, that might be good.
Oh yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to say, given that you're an experienced educator, just given that this is designed for getting better at teaching, what's the best thing you do to help your teaching, Hunter?
I read. And so
Read?
I have taken on the identity. I'm a reader.
Yeah.
And that took a while in my 20s to get that way. But I mean, I try to inhale a wide range too. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
try to make sure, obviously, that stay current in my subject area and content and whatnot. But I try to read a wide range of things that can help my students in different ways, from for more than just preparing them to be, someone that can execute a lesson plan and manage a classroom. And I know
Yeah.
that's a passion of yours too.
Yeah.
And so it's a fun passion now, right? Because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's something that just can kind of it's just fun to learn how to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I remember somebody told me, I might have read this somewhere. It's just it's the ultimate shortcut for leading is to read.
Yeah.
So
Well, then what are you reading right now?
I'm about to start Tightrope. Have you read that?
No. Who's that by?
So it is by Nicholas Kristof
Okay.
and Cheryl Wooden. And it's called Tightrope: Americans Reaching for Hope.
Oh.
And I know you're a Big Ideas Club member, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was one of their new ones. This
Okay.
was one of the ones that they just recommended. And Andy Mullins just read it and told me he loved it. Said it was the best book he read the past year. So
Okay.
I'm
Well,
excited.
Andy
That's a good,
Mullins,
yeah. But he
Mississippi
said,
education legend, Andy
you got
Mullins.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hear it's a gripping read. It goes across to I guess some of the forgotten communities in America and
Mm-hmm.
looks at some of the people that are making a difference in those places. But the circumstances are pretty gut wrenching, is what
Yeah.
Doc said. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the last thing I got for you, Hunter, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Like if people were looking for you in other places, I know we can find you at the University of Mississippi, working hard in the Mississippi Teacher Corps, but anything else we can find you anywhere
Yeah,
else?
absolutely. A supplemental podcast resource to the Amadon Planet is coachanddoc.com. And that's coachanddoc.com. There's a podcast link on there for the Coach and Doc podcast, and it's a podcast between myself and Coach Chris Cutcliffe, where we interview different people that are coaches, and we define coach very open-ended. But it's somebody that views themselves as a coach of people, and we talk about some of their best practices, stories, and who mentored them along the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Hunter, for joining me on this episode of the podcast. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much. What an honor.
And there we go. We talked a lot, and there was a lot about the book. And again, I hope you're as excited about it as we are, and lots of good stuff in there. Again, go pick it up if you want. There's going to be links on the show notes at AmadonPlanet.com/episode 23, or again, go support your local bookstores. Any of the resources, we'll have a link to the podcast that Dr. Taylor mentioned at the end there, and any of the resources that we talked about that I caught, we'll put links to it in the show notes at AmadonPlanet.com/episode 23. And if you're looking for other ways to support the podcast, you can subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Please do that. take a minute to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. We really appreciate it. If you don't know how to do that, you can email me at joel@amazonplanet.com. I'll tell you how to do it. Subscribe to the Amazon Planet download, which contains teaching resources and updates from the Amazon Planet. You can find links to do that at amazonplanet.com. You can follow at Amazon Planet on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or you can like the Amazon Planet Facebook page. You can also check out the Amazon Planet store or Amazon Planet bookshop. Links to those two places can be found in the footer at amazonplanet.com. Any purchases you make when you go through those links support the production costs of the podcast. And in conclusion, thank you for listening to this episode of the Amazon Planet podcast. Thanks to Dr. Taylor for sharing his time and expertise. Thanks to James Clear for writing a good book. Thanks to Matt Mifflin for the music in this episode. And finally, thank you to all of you out there who are seeking to teach better and be the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you have decided to use the gifts you have been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do.